Heather, I'm going to let you speak about the quiz part.
Absolutely. I mean, the quiz part's more gonna be just something very, a fun aspect of it. I mean, I think it's gonna be a helpful tool. I mean, building it out for us just conceptually to see what all people could potentially. I mean, I really went through lists of hundreds and hundreds of different kinks and desires and fantasies. And I was going through a kink list, and it's so funny, Dr. J, that you brought up Justin, because I literally was like, wait a second. I went to one of Justin's trainings. And it was all about fantasy, and I was like, I need to rethink this whole quiz. And so so funny
Yeah,
that
I
you said
tell you,
that.
you put the research piece in, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Let's see. How does science relate to this?
Exactly, exactly. And that's what we're all about over here. It's the science part of it. And so, going back to that, I think that overall, I think what excites me the most about this is people's individual fantasies and really creating those spaces and getting to be in it with them and connecting them to the resources, right? Because we can have a fantasy and we want to start acting it out, but sometimes we just don't know where to go. I mean, your local toy store and sex shop isn't always going to have all the resources that you need. Oftentimes, the people working in those spaces know so many amazing vendors and people to connect you with, but really having somebody there with you to be like, okay, you want to build this, like let's make it happen and let's get into the logistics of it. Like, how do we make this space work for you? I think that is absolutely the most exciting thing about this.
Yeah, and you're talking great resources and having your finger on the pulse of which direction, where to go with that, great Rolodex of everybody's sexuality. And this is where I can go for this, that, or the other. But as you were talking, I was also thinking about how wonderful it is in terms of the meaning about sexuality for the people involved. And that, again, I'm looking at my list. So we had the stripper, and they wanted to create a goddess gentlemen's club, and to look at the space that they started with and where it ended up. And then when she pulled those shoes out, I thought I could never pull those shoes off, no matter what I could do in my life. But wow, just the clarity that it really was, as Dave Snarch always talked about in the crucial. Sexuality is as individual as our fingerprint. And we are truly looking at that through what these spaces look like that people created. So for you two to get together and say, I'm going to back this with science and I'm going to back this with great tools and information, it is so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that something you touched on earlier, we Heather and I coined the phrase sexuality designer. So it's not only interior designer, but it's also sexuality consultant. And I think you touched on this just a bit ago, in the sense that being able to talk about sex, take sexual history, understand kind of where a couple is at, I think, or a relationship or a group or individual, understand where they're at, is so important to designing a room. Because I think that in some of the episodes on the show, there was one partner sometimes that didn't know how to quite bring this up with their partner. They didn't know how to talk about it. And so I think that combining those two elements to help people have these conversations and be able to, give space for that, help them with the words, help them just understand and try it out, how to have this conversation with your partner, how to say, I'm into this, because that could be really scary. And I think that, Dr. Justin Lee Miller's research normalized it and helped us understand that, these are the top fantasies. This is what's really common. But I think that helping people have those conversations in real time and know that not only is it, common, or however you want to phrase it, it's also uh, something that is really empowering to the person to be able to say, I'm into this.
And you know, it really came through that way when you saw the end result of each of those spaces, and the people came in like, wow, you took what was in my head and the conversation that we had, and you made those spaces be what we wanted them to be. And I think that, you know, in the sex education, counseling, and therapy world, that we do have extra tools that the regular population without that training doesn't have. So we can help set up that permission to have the conversation, to say the particular words to help someone get there. I was thinking about the couple Heather and Sarah, the nomads, and when they pulled out the vampire glove, talking about sensation play, I thought to myself, how many people would get that? You know, I was immediately having a skin response in that direction. So it's like, yeah, how do we get here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that episode was so cool because it was this tiny, tiny space in a van. It was van life, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, understanding, what elements can we bring to this tiny, tiny space? And I think about that, with people maybe that have smaller apartments or smaller homes, or I only have this little tiny corner to dedicate, and what you could do with that. And I think the sensation play, the vampire glove. I mean, there's lots of different gloves out there that kind of can raise the senses and and have it be more sensual experience. I think that that was so cool to highlight all the different ways that you can be intimate and share pleasure with each other.
Yeah, and again, I think it was totally across the sexuality continuum, and that's one of the things that I really appreciated about, I guess, the particular, rooms that they chose to design and then to showcase on Netflix for us to see how wide the range is and how interesting and different that everybody's sexual interests and wants are actually, here they are.